Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this live interactive show. I'm your host, Ben from Beyond Mystic. And today we have the wonderful and beautiful, talented Solreta Antaria from solreta.com. Go and visit her at masonjupiter.com using the promo code Beyond Mystic to get 10% off your next reading with Solreta. A very early Australian morning to you, Solreta. Good morning. How are you?
I'm really well, Ben. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it is early. I'm still waking up a little bit, but it's definitely much earlier where you are in Australia.
It is. It's been wonderful to get back into the shows as well. Unfortunately, this morning I've got a bit of a sore throat, but the show must go on. So I think that today we'll start talking about the new direction of Mystic Universe as a show with yourself and myself as the host. But before we do that, I wanted to address the conversation around Kristen. So Kristen, our lovely friend from Arcana Shores, has decided to move on and pursue her own pursuits on her channel. And we wish her all the best. We really enjoyed having her here on the show and as a part of Beyond Mystic. And we'd love to see her back at some stage, but we wish her all the best. And I know that she's having fun doing her own show and pursuing her own pursuits. So we wish her well. Good morning again, Solreta. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well. Interesting things happening at the moment out there in the mystical universe. Lots of strange dreams, and yeah, looking forward to doing this show with you as well and getting into the deep woo, which is that part that I love to swim in.
Exactly, and myself as well. I think when it comes to the mystic universe, there are so many different topics that we can explore, and I've done some of those with Kristen. Today, what I wanted to have a look into was some of the areas that have, I suppose, been near and dear to my heart, and I know is one of the areas that I suppose you kind of specialize in, or at least when I think about Solreta, I think about the person who can really get a good hold of our multidimensional self, and I wanted to have a chat around what does that mean? I mean, when we think about our multidimensional self, what does that mean for us?
Yeah, so I really like to look at it kind of from the outside in, and we know that the inside is the reflection of the outside. So when we look at it in terms of like the aura, because I've seen auras my whole life, so our aura represents the quantum field, and I'll just grab a couple of aura drawings so we can talk about this too and show you some references. So we have this gorgeous aura. So I draw exactly what I see. So we can see here, like this aura actually goes quite far out. But if we're thinking about like our aura being the quantum field or our biofield, and I just want to say hello to some of the gorgeous faces that I recognize in the chat. So yeah, with our biofield, we're mainly energetically existing in this state. So if we think about the heart being electromagnetic and generating, pulse waves and things, and that we're existing in this, and we also know this from Chinese acupuncture too, that that we're electrical. So we think about us being electrical beings, and when we break it down from physics onto the physical level, we're literally just a tablespoon of actual physical matter and particles. So that's 3%. And when we look into our visual spectrum, we're really just looking into the 3% of the visual spectrum is what humans see. So what we're not told and what we're not really, I guess, educated on from a young age is things that we think are imaginary or things that we're told are not real, are really just outside that 3% spectrum. So when we talk about, like dreams or different things like that, sometimes it's us going out into lucid state. So if we can keep kids open for as long as we can, that is a really good thing. For me, I stayed open, but it was mainly through seeing things that were so real to me that it was almost that fear that sort of kept me open and kind of like a strong, stubborn will So where I was telling my parents that there was things in my room, and they're coming in to check and not seeing anything, but I could still see different things, and waking up to mandalas, waking up to different geometries floating in my room. I think that if we look under a microscope, into the bloodstream, and we see that there's so much more than just the thickness of blood, that's a good holographic representation of, that we're much more than what the eye can really see at this sort of level. And we also have equipment within the physical body, like the cones and rods within the eyes. So when we're perceiving light or we're starting to see auras, really good to look in the peripheral. So yeah, I'm all about expanding on seeing outside that 3% or using more than the 10% of the brain, because we have so much more to activate and work with. So when I'm in sessions, I'm really kind of just extending and going beyond that 3%, beyond that 10%. And I have been hooked up to different brainwave devices and being monitored and things like that. And what I notice is I'm able to hold 2 brain states at once. So I can have like a deep kind of like I guess you would say like a theta brainwave state, but then there'll be a focused fixed state at the same time. And when they've done testing with other psychics and mediums, like I think it was maybe John Edward, I know Tyler Henry, the Hollywood medium, they've tested him. And it's really interesting when you actually look at our brainwaves. So I think that it takes a certain kind of level of brainwaves to be able to really get further out into this mystical universe. And I'm a bit of a science geek too for learning and things. So you've got to have that kind of inquisitive, explorative nature when going into these topics.
Yeah, and I think that it's a good mix that you have, Solreta, as well, because it helps with, I think, communicating some of the concepts as well. Because when we can show like a 3D scientific point of view, as well as what you can perceive with your own, equipment, in terms of, viewing auras or what you can see energetically, it gives a fuller picture, I think, and it could help everyone.
Yeah, and I've got just a few examples actually that are really funny. Just with some clients over the last couple of years, I have, some regular clients, and it's interesting because you'll see their aura, just sort of like first off, and then like a few sessions in, a couple of them had bought some of the frequency devices, and it's really interesting because you can actually see sometimes or know that a device is working, because sometimes a client will I had one client, she had a little device tucked into her bra, and I'm like, are you using a frequency device or something of that sort of nature? And she whips it out of her bra. So you can actually see a change with some of the new technology that's around, and some of them not only enhancing your aura or like kind of like the I guess your biofield. So we think about it that we're mainly these living balls of energy. And it's a really interesting thing in terms of when we look into the 100th monkey, washing the potato or whatever it was on the island, and then that going into the consciousness of all the other monkeys around the surrounding islands. It's interesting when you look at how we were limited that 6 feet distance over the last couple of years. And I think it's because so many people were waking up and they were really trying to stop that 100th monkey, when I look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. All right. So when it comes to accessing our ability to see beyond our normal realms of perception, could we perhaps, Sol, pull some cards and ask Spirit, because I have a feeling myself that changing our perception requires a couple of different things, and it may not be the same for everybody. So can Spirit shed some light on, what that might be for some people, on how we shift our perception?
Yeah, sure. That'd be really good to look into. Let's have a look. And also, with me, Ben, I love to pick the cards and read them face down to begin with, until Spirit tells us to flip them over. And part of that's really just reading into like this quantum energy entanglement that we have with different signs and symbols. And, each of the cards kind of has their own kind of archetype or consciousness that goes with it. So I'm just going to feel into these, and I'll show you. I've got them just here on my desk. So we'll feel into these and then flip them over. So the first thing that Spirit's showing me is interesting. I'm actually seeing a brain, and I'm seeing like all the neural networks lighting up in different portions or different parts of the brain. So they're showing me in order to kind of like go in, and you might hear the magpies here.
Yeah.
As I was saying to Ben backstage, I've been having little visits from magpies. When I've had particular clients, some of the magpies get really interested in the energy, and they actually are coming up to the window, sitting here looking into the screen. So yeah, anyway, back into having a look. So what I'm being shown is the different synaptic pathways and things. What they're showing me is first we must kind of like seed the idea into our consciousness that we have these gifts and abilities. It's almost like to take it on like we have a superpower. And then what I'm seeing is like different neural networking restructurization. So what it is, it's almost that we have to believe that we have a perception or that we can kind of see or feel into these mystical realities. It's like a download into the software. And if we don't have the right software program, we can only look into a limited view on reality. They're actually really, really loud today.
I know.
Yeah, so hopefully the sound's coming through okay. So I'm just having a look what else they're showing me. Yeah, they keep showing me, it's almost like it's a communication with higher self as well, or that part of us that's kind of plugged in more to like the, I guess, the fabric of the universe. What's interesting too is they're showing me more, I guess, like the different versions of self that are also coming in collectively. So if we think about the oversoul and we think about like, you know, us being in the earth realm or living in other multidimensional timelines, we're actually able to kind of like harness that spirit energy and be able to kind of remote view from that perspective or point of view. So the way that they're trying to explain it or show me is that it's like casting a wide net across the universe. And I know from working with remote viewing and things as well, that people work with things differently. So some people might be really good at kind of feeling into the emotional or like clairvoyant visual aspects. Other people might be good at like bringing back data and things. So let's flip these cards. And this is amazing. Oh, there's a little magpie out my window. I don't know if you guys can see him. I might flip it so you can see him when he comes past. And how's this for a nice start? The card of the universe. So Spirit definitely knows what it is that we're wanting to ask about and really trying to give us the most direct answer. Now, look at this. Here's the neural network. See how it's lit up in certain spots? And this is why I love to read them face down, because for me, it's the energy of spirit that I really, I guess, get quantumly entangled with. The cards are just visual proof or evidence. So for us, the cards just speak to our conscious mind. Spirit speaks to our unconscious mind. When the two meet in the middle, it's confirmation. So this is really beautiful. What we can also see is this light that's coming in from the universe. Remember, I was describing a light coming into the brain or a connection to higher self. So we have that here coming from this eye, hitting the Kundalini. So Kundalini activation definitely helps with being able to kind of like navigate through these sorts of things. And they're just joining me now. I don't know if you can see. It might be a little bit dark.
There he is.
Yeah, there's two sitting right. Oh, actually, there's a third one there. So they're tuning into all of your frequency at home. And it's just, yeah, it's been a fascinating experience this week. Something definitely unusual, and my clients' cats and dogs and things coming in to watch on the other end. So animals, it's the sign Auntie Minnie Mace, the beautiful Aboriginal elder, talked about. Our third and final sign that we're in the shift will be that the birds start acting weird. And oh my God, they're acting so weird. So what we're seeing with this card of the universe too, she's floating in this womb kind of heart chakra energy with the green. And we see the fabric of the stars also come into this. So the stars and astrology and things also help to tell a story to do with the energy held within the universe. What we also see, though, is this little mansion underneath. And just this week, Spirit's really been talking about the visualization aspect, just as they were talking about that we need to visualize or that we need to kind of imprint on our brains that we do see, that we do I guess, tap into the universe on a psychic or a spiritual level or energetic or lucid level. So that's definitely coming into being the first point of access. That's what we need to do as the groundwork. So Kundalini activation, this can be done with breath work. It can be done by going in, listening to binaural beats. The breath work is more kind of cyclical box breathing. So where you're inhaling, exhaling, and holding between. We see the Six of Wands, which is the card of victory. And we see there's more kind of like Kundalini fire energy with this as well. So it's Leo and Jupiter energy. So it really is kind of, leading your own navigation, but it is working with like expansion and different things. And here we have the holographic kind of representation of more looking at things on a cellular level, how Spirit was saying before about, looking in the blood, that being like a representation of, I guess, the macro and the microcosm. So with this, we see it's also about alignment. So the Four of Wands for me is a card of spiritual marriage, but it's also called the card of completion. So Aries and Venus energy. So where we were talking before about crossing or connecting with multiple timeline versions of self to kind of seek or to kind of almost remote view, this also comes into it. What Spirit's giving us advice on, though, is really breaking down the old subconscious belief systems. So it's deleting the voice, that we may have heard from parents around, that's just imagination, or no, that's not real. So this is to get into the inner child inquisitive nature that we all have, and to really just even ask. I'm getting Spirit tap me on the head, and they're saying the words, what if it's possible? So if we can even just say, what if, or, I wonder, and sort of they're just showing me it's like expanding our consciousness. We literally start to open a rabbit hole. So I forgot to say this one for me, the Knight of Wands for most readers represents just run in, just like do it, make it happen. For me, it really is about weeding the garden first. So deleting the old subconscious beliefs and programs, looking at the trajectory of where you want to land, and then building your persona around that. So talking to yourself in that manner of, I'm a person that sees into multiple realities. I'm able to access multiple timelines. And even if this is just an inward affirmation that you're doing yourself, you're lighting up that little neural network that we're talking about. So this one for me, as a feminine archetype, I would more view it as Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit hole. So it's the card of the Fool, but she has this sense, if we look at Alice, this wonderment, going and talking to the roses that speak, to the caterpillar that's smoking the DMT on the giant toadstool. Or for those of you in America, I found out the day that you guys call them mushrooms. So when we say toadstool, I think it's maybe an Australian or English expression. So that was funny the other day. But yeah, with this, it really is going on that journey. And it's to seek that enlightenment as well. There's definitely, this beautiful sun energy that we see that's highly magnetic. But Spirit's showing me that we are kind of like these little lights. So if we step back to a point of creation, or a point before all of our little lifetimes or incarnations happen to take place, we literally are existing as balls of light. So that ball of light has a consciousness with it. So our consciousness is not limited by our physical body. So we're able to traverse and go into many places, many dimensions, even how would I describe it? Spaces between dimensions. And we're able to have lifetimes of where we rest. So hopefully that kind of like looks into it a little bit deeper.
So I was thinking about just play. I mean, just going into that kind of feeling myself, and just thinking, well, where will I start? I'm seeing sort of images of connecting with the fairies, or having that kind of playful kind of attitude, because as a child, we were talking about this in the pre-show actually, about childhood, going in and being in imaginative play could also be another first step of walking into that path. So what do you think about that idea?
Yeah, definitely. And when I'm doing my psychic teaching, or teaching workshops, classes, things like that, that's what we actually teach is, imagination is creation. It's the same psychic muscle. And so sometimes I'll give like a little task for students to work with, and it might be the example of, say, visualizing a purple love heart, and then it will be getting the consciousness to come fast, because the right side of our brain, which is the one that wants everything really quick. So, flashcards when they're training kids in Japan in psychic training, or in China, they do the flashcards at a rate 3 per second. So this engages the right creative aspect, or the psychic part of the brain too. So we'll visualize, say, a purple heart, and I'm like, turn it pink. All right. And then we'll try and gradually increase the speed. And then it might be to visualize it green, to visualize it gold, to visualize it lapis, or to visualize it red. So different things like that actually kind of build the psychic brain, because it is more of an input-output type situation. And there's, so many amazing different tools and techniques that are a lot of fun to work with for expanding our view on reality.
Yeah. And one thing that's coming up for me at the moment is one of the topics we've talked about on this show in the past with Kristen, which is the fact that the younger crowd, the younger generation, may also help us usher in this kind of age. And when I think about all of the areas of a person's psyche that might need to be shifted or moved out in order for these types of extra perceptual abilities to come forth, I think of education, and I think about how children these days, in a lot of circumstances, have very regimented types of educational regimes. And going back to the thought of play, how important play could be for these children as well, to set a foundation for them, so that they can continue to build upon that muscle, so that it's going to help usher those children in to be able to use those types of abilities in their later years. What do you think about that, Sol?
Yeah, I think that's really good, and especially you and I chatting, kids and school and things backstage too. So I know with me, I tend to go more the alternative route when it comes to schooling for the kids and things, and I know you're sort of on that similar page with that too. The less programming that we can have, and the less that we get shut down sort of psychically, the better. I know that some of the alternative school systems will even meditate and energetically set up the space before your child even arrives at the kindergartens. But I have noticed the change and shift even in the school system compared to when my oldest, who's now 23, when she started, it was very different compared to what it is now. Just the influence of social media on the older kids has really come in to create another program altogether. But if we think about it in terms of being adults, and if we could have kept our imaginations, or kept, this visual spectrum or auditory or kinesthetic connection to the universe and to spirit, or if we can even feel into the extension of our aura and start to energetically really notice when things are coming in, if we can keep our kids open and awake to this, not only will they sort of have more of those kind of survival senses, or animals and things interact within their aura, because it's an awareness, and animals, babies and children recognize when someone's actively working with their aura, when they're working with this kind of more spiritual intelligence. So in regards to the school system and things, it's really knocking it out of the kids. And Rudolf Steiner talked about, play being such a huge, important aspect with our kids, and really using imagination. And it's around age 7 to 9 that he talks about a period of time called the crossing. And this is where we not only sort of separate in original people culture, it's more around age 5 that they see the child separate from the aura of the parents. With Steiner, he talked about around 7 to 9 that you start to see them develop a sense of will. So each of the different years has a developmental stage. The first 7, though, are the most important in regards to psychic abilities and senses, and really helping the child feel connected to the world. But they're still kind of floating in the astral. They're not quite here yet. So when we're trying to get them to do, tasks and things like that are more earthbound, it can be a little bit interesting.
Challenging.
Yeah, challenging. And I should also say too, this is also why it's really important to shelter kids a bit at this age as well. And they do say that if something happens around the crossing age too, it can imprint on the child. So if things are happening around sort of 7 to 9, really important to keep that open dialogue about how they're feeling and really kind of hearing their emotions and things. So yeah, big traumas, things like that can impact when we're separating from the parents' aura too.
Yeah,
I
and
just saw Ocean's comment. That's lovely.
I know, and I think that's a part of the puzzle as well. I think meditation obviously is going to help in that sphere, and affirmations, as you were saying, not necessarily fake it till you make it, but to
Yeah.
to go to a space of believing that you do have those abilities to be able to open up the software, so to speak, so that those types of extra perceptions can come into your field.
Yeah, definitely. And even if we break it down into, if we look at it through a little bit of more of like a metaphor, a representation. So with all of us knowing, like, thoughts create reality, which is sort of like, a bit more standard in the field of woo nowadays. So if we think about like our thoughts being the GPS with the car. And so if we're putting in the set point of where we are now, we still need to enter into the GPS where we want to go. So we need to give it either a visualization, a meditation, or where we're seeing ourselves in the end result. So that's entering it into source field. And then the emotion would be the fuel. So it would be the gas or the petrol that you're putting into this vehicle or this field. So if we're thinking about this in relation to like accessing psychic abilities and things like that, we first need to introduce the idea to our subconscious mind that this is possible. Because if we've grown up being told that it's not possible, or we've grown up, with a very skeptic, more narrow view on reality as well, that's the results and the evidence that we're going to be given, because your brain's looking to, to make things true as well. So we need to kind of increase the chances around that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that when it comes to accessing these portions of ourselves as well, I wonder, what does it give us? How is it going to enhance our lives? How is it going to, set us on our highest trajectory, for our highest good as a collective? Can we perhaps, Sol, have a look in the cards to see whether we can glean some information around what types of things will this give us as a collective to be able to
Yeah.
shift into this arena where more people can really utilize and access these abilities, because not only where I'm going with this is, not only will it necessarily enhance our day-to-day lives, but relationships with our extraterrestrial brothers
Yeah.
and sisters. So what else can the cards tell us about that?
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point that you spoke about, like with the ET aspect, because a lot of them are more telepathic based. So if they can come in and talk to us or communicate to us telepathically first, and it's interesting, I often look at the difference in contact between the males and females in terms of like ET contact. And with the females, we tend to get more kind of like spiritual experiences or kind of like lucid dreamy type states of visitation. And with some of the males that I know, they've had full blown, you know, open a car door or turn a corner in the bush and there's a full blown like grey ET standing in front of them, some things like that. So, yeah, it's fascinating when you look at it from that point of view. So we've got 5 cards just here on my desk. So we'll have a look into these and see what it is. What's really beautiful, I wish that I could share the feelings and the emotion and the energy that spirit speaks. And this is why it's important to have like all of your psychic senses open to, because you get a multitude. It's not just that we're getting a vision and things when you work the psychic muscle. It's a blending or like a synesthesia of the senses that kind of tangle into one organ almost, or one muscle. So what they're showing me is a sea of consciousness. And I'm seeing all these beautiful like little pearls of light that are kind of floating there. And what they're talking about, as we raise our frequency and we start to work with not only this biofield, but kind of these psychic senses and things, we also increase our sensitivity, which means that we're less likely to do harm to one another. So they're showing me, as a collective, we actually start to merge and come together to create a whole new reality. So if we're thinking about, I'm just getting goosebumps like electrically all over. So if we think about this shift towards the ascension timeline, and I'm seeing it in my clients' auras. So I just want you guys to know that we are actually grounding in this ascension energy, and we are making that shift from like third into fourth and fifth. They're all kind of, if we visualize like walls that are kind of like going from third into fourth and fifth, it's more that we're changing the octave on which we're operating on. So we are increasing the light body. Some of my clients, I'm even seeing plasma bodies that are coming in. It's incredible. So what they're showing me with this, I'll just go back to the cards. With this beautiful sea of like connected and collective consciousness together, this would be, from Spirit's point of view, the main role in developing these psychic gifts and abilities. The cool thing is, like, we get to know a little bit more and to kind of like see insights and different things. And it does help us kind of get a heads up, like on a very logical level. But where Spirit's interested is in this collective energy. To me, it just feels like a perfect marriage between like God and all of the little consciousnesses is what they're sort of showing me. So let's flip these cards. Oh my gosh, this is hilarious. It's the Six of Cups. This for me is the sign of all these little balls in the ocean that we were just talking about, or all these little pearls of light. But this card for me, when Spirit gives me Six of Cups, it's known as the card of pleasure, which was very much, tied in with that emotion we were feeling. It's Scorpio and Sun energy. But what I see Six of Cups is, it's the oversoul. It's all the different versions of us, or all those different, we've still got magpies here. It's like us being quantumly entangled as well. The next one that we have is Seven of Swords. So it also helps us to be aware of anyone that has negative intentions, anyone that would be wishing harm or different things like that. It's to navigate away from those sorts of types and those kinds of people. So we actually, at the moment, they really want us to work with boundaries very deeply. So Queen of Swords, the mask is off. We're not having to play games. We're not having to try and pretend, that we're a different kind of character in order to really kind of get along with these sorts of types. So with the Seven of Swords, I also talk about, us holding that one sword. And no matter what kind of comes in to challenge us, it's about holding frequency. So we can see how this is connected to do with that. But yeah, with the Queen of Swords, it's about liberation and freedom. So we can access higher states of consciousness. That's why she's sitting in the clouds too, on this beautiful throne made of clouds. This helps us to access things on a universal level. So this is where I was giggling as well with the universe card popping back up. So we also have the sun. So we're actually causing the shift in reality. That's Spirit's biggest thing of why they even want us talking on this topic. Hey, Meg. I just saw Meg in the comments.
Yes. So I see, what would you call it? The sea as being a body of water, but also a collective, right? And so
Yeah.
if we're able to get past some of the non-authentic types of communication that do sort of happen from time to time, then yeah, I mean, I could see us definitely moving into a world where there is less conflict, because we would have to work through all of those differences with one another. And I think that then merges us more into an understanding that perhaps could bring forth more unity, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you just triggered a memory. So if we look even into like the Krishna creation story from the Vedic culture and the gods and goddesses, so Krishna was said to lay back or in amongst the galaxy of the stars, and from his hand sprung forth all of these beautiful lotus worlds. And Earth was created in order to experience duality. So if we're raising our consciousness and we're stepping into kind of more working with our psychic senses and being able to tap into the mystical nature or the multiverse versions of self too, we're going to understand that we're all connected as one. So we won't have the duality aspect, and we'll free ourselves from that entrapment of duality, of what that lotus world of Earth represents. Because there's other lotus worlds that represent, where the gods and goddesses can go play and manifest literally anything at a thought. So, this is kind of how we, I guess, rise above that Maya or that illusion.
Yeah. Well, then, as you were saying that, I was just thinking about, well, that really ties in when you brought out the card of freedom, right? It's really unlocking a lot of those things that hold us down, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think too, like if we look into, liberation and freedom from the script or the narrative that's been programmed into this world, that we've seen more in modern day times with, television and programming and all of these things, and we're starting to wake up outside of that and realize that we can pop our head out of the net, that we're not exactly trapped down here, and it's all to do with frequency. It's definitely to do with like raising vibration. And I find, getting out into nature and things like that, it just resets, regrounds you, it nurtures you. Eating foods that have like high plasma field or like superfoods, they have a huge plasma charge on it. I'm seeing changes in light bodies with that. I've seen clients use magnets and things to increase the plasma field. Tai Chi, Qigong, acupuncture, all of these things. So I think this time, and with where we're sort of heading in terms of future and this ascension, it's not that we're fully leaving like the physical, it's more that we're adding more light to it, more higher consciousness. The other thing that I'm also seeing change within my clients and their auras is where we would have once had in the mental body more of kind of like a yellow energy, I'm seeing it change to sometimes gold and sometimes like violets and indigo. So we're kind of upgrading our consciousness. The way Spirit explains it to me is we're going from being a yellow local computer that's not connected to the internet into a laptop that's connected to the internet, it's connected to the cloud. So for some people this feels like that memory wise, that they're like, oh, I can't remember what was it that I was thinking, or it's almost like we're kind of losing that local mental kind of connection that we had, but we're starting to tap more into higher fields of consciousness. So things are feeling more like it's streaming or dropping or inspiration come in. The way that we're mentally working is changing. And we can see this in the astrology from the last, I think it's 840 something year cycle, to do with like the dance between Saturn and Jupiter. So yeah, it's just fascinating time to be alive.
Well, I was just, as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, okay, great. That answers my question. I'm actually not going insane here, because when you were saying that you know losing things in your mind, like what kind of train of thought you're on,
Yeah.
that's been happening. It's been happening to me a lot actually lately, and I think give it the last 6 months, I'd say. The ringing in the ears has been upped significantly. The amount of times where you know I'll start to bring things together in a split second, an image, a thought, a knowing, all coming together all as one. And it does feel like there is a bit of a shift there, because that local brain has not really been functioning as well as it should at the moment.
Well, you're definitely not the only one. And it's funny because you have a lot of gold in the mental body. And then I saw like an indigo color around you further out as well. So yeah, you're definitely tapping into higher consciousness, and the way that it's almost like we're receiving like an augmented reality in a way. It's like that next level up. So it's really exciting. And this is just the start. This is just the beginning. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, I agree, and I've been just scouring the net, looking at some of the different conversations that has been sort of happening across YouTube and Rumble, and I don't know whether a huge amount of it resonates with me, because there's been some discussions around that an ascension window is closing, and there's a lot of sort of fear attached to those types of topics. For me personally, and I think uh, I feel as though those types of messages I should just ignore, because if we're on an upward trajectory, then really, do we have any closing windows? It feels to me like we're moving into a new age, and it's
Yeah.
just going to be like a staircase. We're just going to be staircasing this, for the remainder of our lives, really.
And that's the vision and spirit will quite often show as a staircase. But I mean, when we look into prophecies, whether it's the Hopi prophecy and then saying that with this shift, there was a letter that the Hopi put out. I know Stephen and Evan Strong have got it put up on their Forgotten Origin. I think it's .org or .net, the website. But they essentially said that in order to kind of make this shift or change, we have to hop in the ocean by ourselves or into the river by ourselves. We can't take everyone with us. And that's the thing. We have to kind of let go of this safety net of following the crowd. And we saw what following the crowds did to a huge portion of humanity over the last couple of years. And, I'm so glad to be a bit more neurodivergent or neurospicy and ADHD to not have fallen into that. And these are the types of people that are we're not ones that are easily programmable. We're more divergent in that way. So a lot of our people and soul family that are watching, we're kind of more, if we're in the movie Divergent, we're the ones that can't get the the program. The other thing too, even when we look into Auntie Minnie Mace talking about the bird signs and the birds acting weird, we're seeing and she said this was the third and the final stage of the shift. So that to me is a positive representation from a beautiful elder that predicted the toilet paper shortage being the first sign of the shift 2 years before it even happened. So when it happened, everyone's like, didn't Auntie Minnie say something about, there's going to be a toilet paper shortage will be the sign that we're going through this ascension? And the way that they sort of view it is, there being like a separation from the old world where people that haven't finished completing the lessons or are still sort of more in that, I don't want to talk in terms of lower or higher vibration. Let's just say a different frequency. And there's the separation of that into kind of, we're on a different frequency and wavelength. And that's why we're all kind of coming together as little soul tribes and things. And, there's different experiences and reasons of why we're shifting reality. So it is about us tapping back into becoming creator beings again. We're starting to escape the duality of this lotus world that we were talking about, if we're talking about it through Vedic terms, and starting to realize that we actually do create our reality. So this is where in the cards with the Seven of Swords and the Queen of Swords, so important to keep in alignment with your frequency, to recognize anything that kind of depletes or makes it feel a little bit lower, and to really keep working towards, building frequency.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're seeing more of that across the whole spectrum of society. And when I think about my own sort of work life, I had not touched an office or been into an office since 2019. And now there's a very big push to go back to offices and that sort of thing. And one of the key things that I'm experiencing is the fact that a lot of the realizations that we'd had over the last 3 years are really becoming conversational pieces to many. And what we're talking about at the moment, not necessarily in the office, but you go out to lunch with someone and sit down and have a meal with them, and they start opening up and having these types of conversations. So, I mean, I can certainly personally see it happening within our society, and I think that is a part of that shift, that changing of perception, even the first steps to that.
Yeah, definitely. And even looking at it from, I guess, someone who's seen energy and things all my life, what's interesting is I've been talking with a few clients. I can see in their aura when they have this sort of certain level of magnetism. And I'll always say to them, I'm like, babies and children stare at you and animals will gravitate to you. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's true. Like all the time, babies will be staring at me and they'll be looking around going, why? But it's to do with frequency. And the other thing that we can notice too, because a lot of us here on Beyond Mystic are starseeds, we've come in particularly for this mission, for this timeline, and a lot of us were aware of our ET versions of self or the other multiple lifetimes that we've had previous to this one, or coexisting if we're looking at it on a multidimensional level. But the interesting thing is you can sometimes walk up to people and you just know they're starseeds, whatever it's like within the eyes or within kind of their frequency or soul. So I think we're able to recognize people energetically now. And it's interesting because sometimes when you start to, broach that subject or have that little bit of, okay, I'm just going to like throw a few things out there and just see, you have like your few flag words to test or to find out if someone's awake is what I hear like a lot of people talk about. And it's the same for, the spiritual side of things. There's certain words that we know are key in regards to people being awake, to do with spiritual things. And what's interesting is sometimes when you feel that energy or you feel that connection to certain people frequency wise, sometimes you've had like an entanglement or a past life together and it's you recognizing their frequency. So I think we're going to have more of these sorts of things where people are meeting people for the first time and they're recognizing that they've had past lives previously together.
Yeah. I just on an overall sense of what's sort of happened over the last 3-4 years is, and I don't know whether this is true, but this is just how I'm perceiving it, is, we have the human realm here, and we have what's happening at a 3D perspective here on the planet. We also have spirit, we have the angels, and they have an ability to affect change, I think, at a certain level. But perhaps what's happened over the last, say, 3 to 5 years is that maybe larger forces coming from galactic center or somewhere else, I don't know where exactly, come along and said, this surface is like a chessboard. Earth is like a chessboard. Let's just knock over many of those pieces and start the game from scratch, because we need to reshuffle the deck. And I think that perhaps in some way that might also be linked in with the perception change as well. So it's not necessarily just because the chessboard's been knocked over just because. I think it's also changing relationships that we have so that we're aligned with people who are more likely to activate some of these bits in us, whether it be DNA at an energetic template level or something like that. But what do you think about that kind of idea, Sol?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm just putting a little reminder out, I'll have to go in a minute for clients for the day as well. But yeah, the vision that I get shown from spirit as you're talking about that too is just a reminder of like when I literally see them come into our physical reality, and it is all about frequency and vibration. So if we can expand that kind of bandwidth that we have visually and, just kind of like training the brain that every time we see the flash of light, it did happen, we start to expand that little bandwidth that we have. So the way in which I sort of see spirit come in, if I'm trying to think about it in terms of, people or beings coming from foreign places, the way that I've had a lot of experiences, first they'll try and meet you in kind of like a lucid or dreamlike state because it's much easier for them. Instead of having to try and hold, you see it with the Alpha Centaurians that, they have these blue suits with the gravity belts, and the gravity belts help them acclimate to the heavy density that we have down here. So for a lot of the beings that are positive and working with us on a higher level, it's really hard for them to kind of come in and maintain that bandwidth or frequency to be in our dimension for long enough. So yeah, for a lot of them, they are really kind of, you'll see them sometimes just vibrate through the wall. So like physicality for them is not really an obstacle. They can kind of just come right through with things like that. And in regards to the analogy with the chess piece, should we have a quick look into some cards around that?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah.
And it just spirits like, oh, that's an interesting question that you had. Let's have a look and see. Okay, so we'll flip these over because we're a little bit shorter on time. So yeah, it looks like that there has been different things come in that's different to the higher plan that was originally set out for Earth. So what we see is a fracture from the spiritual. So with this Eight of Cups, it's Saturn energy right at the top. So we see these little cups are cracked. We see the water's only flowing in the mental and emotional. That's all. Like, we've been so disconnected from the spiritual side of things. There's been a different program happen in the matrix. So we see here with the Queen of Disc, and I love her. She's one that Spirit nicknames a Law of Assumption card for me. So we have this beautiful flower of life type grid over the sphere. So spheres represent more of like a fifth dimensional reality. And we see here she's spiritually attuned. Her focus is on the spiritual with the pine cone crown and the antenna that are huge. We also see the Merkaba inside of the cube. So what's happened is we were told that we were physical beings and that everything, like, you have to make change on the physical. Everything has to be like under the pump. Everything has to be pressure. You got to, like, put pressure to create diamonds and all of these different things. Whereas here, she's reprogramming people to awaken on a spiritual level that will affect and change our reality. So we see the Merkaba actually controlling from the inside out the cube. So the spiritual aspect of who we are is literally changing the game. So it's interesting with all the chess pieces being knocked over, but it's actually parts of us too that are like, you know what, we're bored with this game. Like, this isn't like how things were supposed to go. So we see the Seven of Cups too. So there's a lot to emotionally detox before we get back to this point of wisdom. So we see here that many are being the beacons of light at the moment, that they're illuminating the path. So all of you guys out there are little lights illuminating the path, helping to bring about this ascension energy. And we see here with the Hermit, he's very much like a Merlin character, but he is Virgo energy. So he does step into self-doubt. He's like, I don't know, like, I'm just one person. I don't know if I can make a difference. Spirit wants you guys to know that each person individually is making a difference. And we have the sun again in the lantern. So you guys individually are bringing about this epoch of change. We also have the sperm and the egg too. So we have these very fundamental cellular energy that's connected in to do with the fabric of space and time. So yeah, it does look like a positive rearrangement of the chess pieces, but we need to keep purging emotionally.
Yeah, and I suppose just to close this out and put a bit of a bow on it as well, to put a real life example within my life to kind of confirm what you're saying is, in days gone by, if I think about myself 15 years ago, there's a component within me. So my moon sign is Aries, and so when I want to do something, I can get really locked into trying to just get it done, right? And the RAM will activate, and trying to push in the 3D at the moment is just not working, right?
Yeah.
It feels as though we do have this shift, and every time I get myself into that kind of mode of trying to push, I'm feeling like the universe is pushing back a little bit as well, and perhaps maybe as a bit of a guide to say, yeah, you can use your energy in this way, but how about you just look at it from a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
And you'll get the outcome that you're after, just not in the same way as you used to,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. And it really is, because if we think about like our energy imprinting onto, we'll just call it the fabric of the universe, for lack of a better term. If we're imprinting that we're stuck or that there's like doubt or confusion in that's what we're embedding in that field. So we need to actually put yourself in the situation of, oh, I feel so great. I'm so glad that I've got that solution. That was amazing. Like, that idea just came in. So we need to sort of step into that and then kind of like let go of the reins. And then it's interesting how spirit or our higher selves will just kind of be fed that energy in from, I guess, more of a higher place in the universe, God consciousness. Sometimes it does come from your higher self. And when we think about it just on a base aura level, that's our pulse and kind of like our measurement, that we are shifting the way that we mentally operate. So we do kind of need to work with it from this letting spirit kind of drop things in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like the horse before the cart approach is how
Yeah.
I'm kind of seeing it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, Solreta. It's been a fantastic first show. Even though my voice is sort of not quite there, but the show must go on. I've had a wonderful time. I would like to bring up on screen first before we go a couple of things just to remind the audience. If I can just move this along, please head over to rumble.com/Beyond Mystic and subscribe to the show. We have about 57.1 thousand subscribers. And look, I see that the channel is growing every day. We've got so much content in there that is well and truly binge worthy. I love sitting here and watching all the different perspectives from our team, and I'm enjoying being a part of it as well. Also, just a reminder before we go, head on over to masonjupiter.com and use the promo code of Beyond Mystic to get 10% off your next reading with Solreta. A wonderful first show. And
Thank you.
I thank you for being here. And my voice is just about to go. So thank you for your time. And I appreciate the audience as well coming and joining us today. The next time we'll be seeing each other will be in a fortnight's time. And after that, we'll have our Christmas break and we'll be back in the new year. So I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time, and we'll have another episode for our audience. So any last words, Solreta, before we go?
Oh, I just want to say thank you so much, Ben. It's been so much fun looking into these topics. And, I love learning more about like spirit's perspective on things. And you just hold such a beautiful energy in, with these questions, but I love your insights and things. And thank you to our beautiful audience. And I can't wait to watch that show that JC just live streamed when I finish the end of the workday. Yeah, I love watching the shows too.
Yeah, myself included. I think one of the things that JC likes to say is, people are disconnecting from CNN, and I agree with that. In my evenings, that's what I prefer to do. I prefer to come and watch the shows from Beyond Mystic. So I'll certainly be doing that myself this evening. Thank you very much again, Solreta, for being here for me. You've been a wonderful guest. And thank you to the audience, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.